My name is Luke Harper, 28 years old from Elk Hollow, Wyoming. I thought I was just a ranch kid from Wyoming, until I found a dusty box in my parents' attic with a name I'd never heard and a photo of a woman who looked exactly like me. That's the day I realized I was adopted. And that my real mother didn't die by accident. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the truth I'm about to share isn't just shocking. It's personal. This isn't just a story about family, it's about betrayal, buried secrets, and the moment I realized everything I knew was a lie. Let's begin. They say if you dig deep enough in an old house, you'll find the bones of every secret your family tried to bury. I wasn't looking for bones. Just some dusty holiday decorations in my parents' attic. But what I found instead cracked the foundation of everything I thought I knew about my life. It was late October, the Wyoming sky bruised with snow clouds, and the wind whipping through Elk Hollow like it had a score to settle. Mom asked me to fetch a few donation boxes from the attic, old blankets, lights, and ornaments she didn't want cluttering the house anymore. The attic was always a strange space. Low ceiling. One flickering bulb. Smelled like dry wood, mouse droppings, and the past. I pulled down the ladder, climbed up, and started moving boxes. Most were labeled with things like Smaz or Dad's tools, but one box stood out. It was shoved behind a trunk, sealed tight with old tape, and written across the top in thick black marker was one word, Luke. My stomach dipped. That was my name. But I'd never seen this box before. I crouched down, heart ticking faster, and peeled the tape away with my pocket knife. Inside were folded documents, something wrapped in tissue paper, and a small photo wedged between them. I pulled it out first. It was a picture of a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, with dark hair, tired eyes, and a faint smile. She was holding a newborn in a hospital blanket. Me? On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, it read, Evelyn Harper, 1998. Luke, Day 1. My hands went cold. I dug further. A hospital bracelet. Faded and brittle. It read, Harper, baby boy. A birth certificate. The mother listed was Evelyn Harper. Father, unknown. Place of birth? Cheyenne, not Elk Hollow. And then the letter. It was folded over and over, like someone had read it 100 times, or tried to forget it 1,000. I opened it slowly. To whoever raises my boy, please protect him. I can't keep him safe anymore. His father is dangerous. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't outrun him. Please tell him the truth one day. If it's ever safe. No signature. Just the tremble of someone writing through fear. I sat back against the attic wall, the whole world suddenly too loud. The box, the photo, the letter, it didn't make sense. Bill and Martha Carlson were my parents. Weren't they? I put everything back in the box except for the photo and the letter. Those I slid into my jacket. I climbed back down the ladder, heart pounding like I'd just stumbled onto something I was never meant to see, and I had a feeling. That box was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the woman in the photograph, Evelyn Harper, cradling a newborn with a look that was equal parts pride and heartbreak. My reflection in her face was impossible to ignore. The sharp jaw. The same eyes. The truth wasn't just hinted at, it was screaming through the silence I had mistaken for peace my entire life, but I couldn't go to my parents. Not yet. I didn't trust what they'd say. I needed to hear it from someone else, someone who didn't have 3 decades of lies to defend, so the next morning, I made up a story about heading to Riverton to check out a used tractor. Instead, I drove 3 hours southeast to Cheyenne, where the birth certificate said I'd been born. The county records office was small and smelled like old paper and linoleum polish. I gave the clerk my name, Evelyn Harper, and asked for anything they had on her. I half expected a raised eyebrow or a shrug. Instead, the clerk tapped a few keys, narrowed her eyes at the screen, and quietly disappeared into a back room. When she returned, she handed me a thin manila folder. Inside was a death certificate. Evelyn Harper. Age 24. Died December 3, 2000. Single vehicle crash. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Location, a remote county road near Laramie. No listed employer. No next of kin. I ran my thumb across the edge of the paper. A single vehicle crash. Winter Road. No foul play suspected, but it felt too neat. No witnesses. No police notes beyond a generic line about icy conditions. No autopsy on file. Just a line in a government ledger and a woman erased from the world before her son ever knew she existed. Me. I closed the folder, heart twisting. I wanted to believe it was just a tragic accident. But the letter I'd found in the attic was still burned into my brain. I can't keep him safe anymore. His father is dangerous. Was someone following her that night? Did someone run her off the road? I needed to know more. I drove to the public library and searched the archived newspapers from December 2000. Most articles that week were about snowfall and cattle auctions, except one. Young woman dies in suspected icy road crash. There was a photo. Grainy. But it was her. Evelyn Harper. The article was barely 2 paragraphs. But one line made my stomach drop. Sources say the victim may have had a child who was not present at the scene. That was it. No follow-up. No mention of a missing child. I leaned back in the stiff library chair, pulse thudding. Evelyn had died alone, likely scared, possibly hunted. And the child who vanished from the wreckage, that was me. After leaving the Cheyenne library, I sat in my truck with the newspaper clipping in my lap and the name Evelyn Harper still echoing in my head like a ghost refusing to rest. I didn't know who she truly was, what she loved, what she feared, or how she'd ended up alone on a snow-covered road with no one to claim her. But I was certain of one thing now. Someone wanted her story buried. And I was going to dig it up. Back in Elk Hollow, I started asking quiet questions. Not to my parents, they were still playing the part of clueless ranchers, smiling through Sunday suppers like my life hadn't just cracked in half. No, I asked around town. Old-timers at the feed store. Locals at the diner who'd seen too much and said too little. It took a few days before a name slipped out in a hushed voice over coffee. Clint Walker. He used to come through here, said Marvin, a retired deputy who spent mornings chain-smoking on the bench outside the general store. Back when I was on the force. Trouble followed him like a shadow. What kind of trouble? I asked, keeping my tone casual. Bar fights. Assault charges that didn't stick. There was a girl, too. Young. Thought she could fix him. Pretty thing, name was. He paused, trying to remember. Evelyn, I think. My stomach tightened. What happened to him? I asked. Marvin glanced around, lowered his voice. Last anyone heard, he got into it with some rancher. Disappeared after that. Some folks say he skipped town. Others say he's still out there, somewhere in the hills. Living off-grid like a ghost. The image hit me hard, a violent man vanishing into the Wyoming wilderness, unreachable, unaccountable. And my mother, just a girl, trying to outrun him with a baby in her arms. I needed more. I drove an hour south to Laramie and pulled records from the sheriff's department. Clint Walker's name showed up more times than I expected: bar fights, trespassing, suspected assault. But each time, he slipped through the cracks. No convictions. No real follow-up, except one, a domestic disturbance call filed by Evelyn Harper in September 2000, 3 months before her death. The notes were brief, but chilling. Caller reported ex-boyfriend threatening to take her child. Subject fled before deputies arrived. That was the last report involving either of them. I sat there in the sheriff's lobby, the file shaking in my hands. Evelyn had tried to get help. She had known she was in danger. And no one had stopped him. I wasn't just the son of a woman who died too young. I was the son of a woman who'd been hunted, cornered, and silenced, and the man she feared, he might still be out there, watching, waiting, breathing the same cold Wyoming air as me. I didn't storm in. I drove slow, rehearsed what I'd say a dozen times, but when I pulled into the gravel drive of my childhood home, my hands still trembled on the steering wheel. The Carlson Ranch looked the same as always: faded red barn, cracked porch steps, Mom's wind chimes dancing in the breeze, but everything felt different now. Like the land itself had been part of the lie. Martha was at the kitchen sink when I walked in. Bill sat at the table reading the local paper, his reading glasses sliding down his nose. Neither of them looked up at first. When they did, I wasn't their son. I was a stranger holding a truth they'd hoped would stay buried. "We need to talk," I said. Mom's hands froze over the dishes. Dad lowered the paper. "I found the letter," I continued. "The photo. The bracelet. And I know about Evelyn Harper." The air thinned instantly. Bill stood slowly, jaw tightening. "Where did you?" "In the attic," I cut in. "You hid her from me. Lied about who I am. And now I know about Clint Walker. About the police report. About how Evelyn was running for her life, with me." Martha let out a shaky breath. "Luke. Don't," I snapped. "Don't call me that like everything's fine. Just tell me the truth." She sank into the nearest chair, eyes glossy. "She came to us desperate," she said. "Barely 20. Holding you in a blanket and begging us to take you. She was scared of him," Bill added, voice flat. "Said Clint had threatened her and the baby. We told her we'd help. Keep you both safe." "Then why wasn't she the one to raise me?" I asked. Silence. Why did she die alone on a highway with no trace of me in the wreckage? Martha looked down at her hands. "She was going to leave. Said she couldn't stay, not even here. She thought Clint would find her, no matter what. She said, if anything happened, we had to protect you." Bill's stare hardened. 2 nights later, she was gone. Car flipped outside Laramie. Sheriff ruled it an accident. "And you just kept me?" "She asked us to," Martha said. "Not like that. Not officially. But she said, if something happens, keep him safe. Don't let him grow up afraid." I wanted to believe them. But something didn't sit right. She didn't sign any papers. There was no adoption. "You just kept me. Hid me. We were trying to give you a life," Dad said. "One without fear." "Then why did you lie?" I asked, voice cracking. "Why didn't you ever tell me who I was?" He didn't answer, and I knew why, because protecting me wasn't the only reason. They weren't just running from Clint, they were running from the truth, too. And they'd buried Evelyn right alongside it. I left without packing. Just got in my truck and drove, gravel spitting behind me like the past trying to claw me back. The Carlson house, my house, shrunk in the rearview mirror, and with every mile I put between us, the weight of their silence grew heavier. They'd raised me, fed me, taught me how to work a fence line and how to clean a rifle, but they'd never given me myself. They gave me a version of the truth that suited them, a quiet one, buried in frost and habit. I drove north through the valley, past rusting tractors and hay fields turning gold with early frost, until I reached the edge of Cold Creek, where my buddy Sawyer kept an old hunting cabin. He owed me a favor, and I needed solitude. No cell service, no neighbors, no memories. The first night, I sat by the fireplace, the wind pressing against the windows like it was trying to whisper something I wasn't ready to hear. I stared into the flames and thought about all the times I'd called Martha Mom, never knowing her love came at the cost of someone else's pain. Every memory unraveled in my mind: Christmas mornings, birthday hugs, scraped knees and bedtime stories, all of it tainted now. I thought about how Dad always looked at me like I wasn't quite what he expected. How Mom would flinch when I asked questions about my early years. I used to think that was just how ranch families were, rough around the edges. Now I knew it was guilt, and maybe fear. I pulled Evelyn's letter from my jacket, unfolded it again. The edges were worn now, the ink faded, but the fear in her words was still sharp. Please protect him. I can't keep him safe anymore. What had she been running from? Clint Walker? Or something else? I couldn't stop thinking about the way Bill's eyes went dark when I brought up her name. He wasn't just hiding the past, he was guarding it. Like a dog chained to a secret, and I kept circling back to one question I couldn't shake: what if Evelyn hadn't died by accident? What if her car didn't just flip on an icy road? I stared into the flames until my eyes burned. They never planned for me to find that box. I wasn't supposed to know the name Evelyn Harper, or the story of a young woman desperate to protect her baby. I wasn't supposed to question the Carlson name, but I was done living in someone else's version of the truth. I was going to find out what really happened to my mother, no matter what it cost me. I stayed in that cabin longer than I planned. Days blurred into nights. Snow began dusting the pines, and my anger slowly simmered into something colder. Numbness. I told myself I'd done enough. That maybe the truth wasn't mine to find. That maybe it died with Evelyn Harper on that icy road. But then came the knock. It was Sawyer. He drove up with extra firewood and a six-pack, figuring I might need both. He handed me a beer and said it like it was just another piece of small-town gossip. You hear about the trapper up near 10 Sleep? I shook my head. Old guy, real off-the-grid type, bought supplies in Grable last week. Barely spoke. One of the clerks said he looked beat to hell. Said his name was Clint. Clint Walker. My blood ran cold. Sawyer kept talking. Unaware of the bomb he'd just dropped. Guy's been living up in the backwoods for years, they think. No ID. Folks say he hunts elk and disappears for months at a time. Clint Walker, the man my mother feared. The man who threatened to take me. The man the Carlsons swore was gone, but he wasn't gone, he was alive, and close. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with Evelyn's photo in my hand and the letter on the table beside me. My mother had died running from this man. And now I had a chance to look him in the eye, to ask him what really happened. To make him answer for it. The next morning, I loaded my truck with supplies, blankets, jerky, maps. I told Sawyer I was heading up north for some air. He didn't press. Folks in Wyoming knew better than to poke around a man's reasons when he had that kind of look in his eye. The drive was long, winding through canyons dusted with snow and shadow. Every mile felt like a step deeper into something I couldn't come back from. In Grable, I stopped at the supply store. The clerk, a girl in her 20s with too much eyeliner and a nervous twitch, remembered him immediately. Yeah, he came in last week, she said. Bought canned beans and ammo. Looked rough. Smelled like smoke. Paid cash. Asked about traps. Did he say where he was headed? She hesitated, then pointed toward the hills. Said he'd be camping near Bear Ridge. That's outlaw country up there. No cell service. No cops. Just cold and trees. Perfect, I thought. I left town with my jaw clenched and my grip tight on the steering wheel. Somewhere in those mountains was the man who tore my mother's life apart, and now, I was coming for answers. The farther I drove into the Bear Ridge backcountry, the more the land changed, steeper, colder, quieter. Pines closed in like they were keeping secrets. The roads turned to trails, and then to barely visible ruts carved by time and snow. I parked the truck when it couldn't go any farther and continued on foot, pack on my shoulders, rifle strapped tight to my back. I wasn't sure if I was hunting the truth or walking into it blind. By sunset, I spotted smoke curling through the trees, thin, gray, cautious. It led me to a crooked cabin tucked into a rocky bluff, nearly swallowed by wilderness. A busted-up snowmobile sat beside it. Antlers hung from a post like trophies. A man sat on a stump near the fire, sharpening a blade with hands that shook more than they should have. Clint Walker? I called out, he froze. Looked up, even from 20 feet away, I could see he was a ghost of a man. Gaunt. White beard stained yellow around the mouth. Eyes sunken, but alert. He didn't reach for a weapon. Just stared at me. Who wants to know? He rasped. I stepped closer. My name is Luke. He squinted, confused at first, then something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Regret, Evelyn's boy, he said quietly. You've got her eyes. I didn't sit. I didn't smile. I just said, I need to know what happened. He nodded like he'd been waiting years for this. I didn't kill her, he said before I could even ask. Then who did? He looked away, into the fire. I was a bastard back then. Drunk. Angry. Thought I could control her. I hit her once. She left. Took you. I never saw either of you again. She filed a police report, I said. Said you threatened to take me. I did, he admitted. But I didn't follow through. By the time I sobered up, she was gone. I tried finding her, but she'd vanished. You expect me to believe you just gave up? Clint rubbed his hands over his face. I tracked her to Elk Hollow. But I wasn't the only one. I got there too late. What do you mean? He looked up slowly. The fire crackled between us like it was holding the last word. She was staying with a man. Big rancher. Said his name was Carlson. My breath caught. He told me she left town. Said she didn't want me near the boy. I didn't believe him. But then she turned up dead. And I knew. You're saying Bill Carlson killed her? I asked, my voice flat. Clint didn't blink. I think he saw you as his to keep. And her as a loose end. I staggered back. The truth struck harder than a rifle, but to the gut. My whole life, I thought Clint Walker was the monster, but maybe the real devil had been living under my roof all along. The drive back to Elk Hollow was a blur, bare trees, winding roads, snow-covered fences flashing past like ghosts. But all I could see was my father's face, Bill Carlson, the man who raised me. Who taught me how to throw a rope, how to shoot straight, how to lie with a steady voice, the same man Clint Walker had just named as my mother's killer. I didn't want to believe it. God, I didn't. But something about Clint's broken face, the tremble in his voice, the way he never asked for forgiveness, it all rang true. Evelyn didn't die on some icy road because of bad luck, she died because someone wanted her gone, and I knew who had the most to gain by keeping her buried. Back in town, I went straight to the courthouse archives. The receptionist recognized me but didn't ask questions. Small towns learn to keep quiet when the Carlson name is involved. I dug through old case files, scanned microfilm, traced phone logs and incident reports. Most of it was useless, pages blacked out, notes missing, but then I found it, a complaint filed by a local deputy, dated just 2 days before Evelyn's accident. The deputy claimed he'd been ordered to stand down on a missing persons inquiry involving a young woman staying with the Carlsons. His report was short, but clear. I believe Evelyn Harper may be in danger. She's frightened. Asked for help. Said someone was watching the house at night. The report was unsigned. No follow-up. Just buried in a stack of old files under unfounded. I took a photo and kept digging. Found a mechanic's invoice from a small shop outside Laramie. The date, the morning Evelyn died. The car she was driving, an old station wagon, had brake concerns listed on the work order. The mechanic's note said she left before they could inspect it. My stomach dropped. It wasn't an accident, it was sabotage. I left the courthouse with my hands shaking, fury and grief roiling beneath my skin like oil over flame. I drove out to the ranch, his ranch, but didn't go in. I just watched. Bill Carlson was on the porch, sipping his coffee like the world hadn't changed. Like he hadn't stolen everything from me. He looked up and saw me, and for a second, I swore he knew. His face didn't show fear. Just stillness. Like he'd been waiting for this moment. He gave a single nod, then turned and walked back inside. That was the last time I saw him. I didn't go to the sheriff. I didn't need justice from men who'd buried the truth for decades. I had what I came for, the truth. He didn't protect me. He didn't save me. He killed my mother, and for the rest of his life, he'd live knowing I knew. The clerk at the courthouse looked up when I slid the paperwork across the counter. Name change? She asked, adjusting her glasses. Yeah, I said, steady but firm. From Carlson to Harper. She gave me a long look. Maybe she recognized the name, maybe not. It didn't matter. I wasn't doing it for her, or even for me. I was doing it for the woman no one fought for when it mattered, Evelyn Harper, the mother they tried to erase. The process was faster than I expected. Within 3 weeks, it was official. The name Carlson was off my ID, my mail, my bank account, and the mailbox on the new piece of land I bought 5 miles west of Elk Hollow. It wasn't much, just 15 acres, a half-broken cabin, and a view that stretched for miles, but it was mine. No shadows. No lies. Just fresh air and unburied truth. But before I started rebuilding, I had one more thing to do. I took everything I'd found, Evelyn's letter, the police reports, Clint's statement, even the mechanic's invoice, and I wrote it out. Every word. The full truth. I submitted it as an open letter to the Elk Hollow Gazette. I didn't sign it anonymously, I signed it, Luke Harper. Son of Evelyn. They published it the next Sunday. By noon, it was all anyone could talk about. Townspeople whispered in church pews, read it over breakfast at the diner, and looked at Bill and Martha Carlson with something different in their eyes, not respect. Not fear. Just shame. I didn't wait for the Carlsons to respond. I didn't need an apology. Let them rot in silence the same way they left my mother to rot in the dark. Later that week, I drove to the small cemetery on the edge of Laramie. I'd found where Evelyn was buried, no headstone, just a sun-bleached plaque in a patch of neglected grass. I brought her flowers. Wild lupin and Indian paintbrush I'd picked from my land. I knelt down, brushing the frost from her marker. "Hi, Mom," I whispered. It felt strange on my tongue. "But right, I'm sorry it took me this long to find you. But I know now. I know everything. And I promise I won't let them forget you again." I sat with her until the sun dropped behind the pines, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was standing on solid ground, not as a Carlson, not as a secret, but as myself. As a Harper, the lies didn't own me anymore. I did, and in the quiet that followed, I swore I heard her in the wind, not crying. Not pleading, but proud. If this story hit you the way it hit me while telling it, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and subscribe for more real, raw, and emotional journeys like this one. Have you ever uncovered a family secret that changed everything? Drop your story in the comments. Let's talk. Let's connect, and remember, sometimes the truth doesn't set you free until you dig it up yourself. Thanks for watching. I'm Luke Harper. And I finally know who I am.